Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'd like to welcome one of my former clients, Drew Fabrikant. Drew is an entrepreneur and founder of Scout, an AI marketing tool for salespeople to capture and close leads more efficiently. Drew and I worked together in building the first version of Scout, and I'm excited to learn how the product has changed a year later. With all that being said, welcome, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the unnamed podcast. Excited to be guest number 3.
Yes, soon to be named. We'll find a name very soon for it. But yeah, so I'll let you introduce yourself. Just tell a little bit about your background. Share what you're working on currently. Yeah, Mike is
Yeah,
yours.
absolutely. So thanks again. My background, kind of been in a couple different places before ending up in tech. I actually started my career as a corporate M&A attorney. And before that, I was focused in sports and doing a lot of sports law. I went down to Wall Street, started an investment advisory firm down there, built that from the ground up, and then ended up going into real estate technology. We built a prop tech platform that was doing lead generation and algorithmic routing of leads to service providers, and that's kind of morphed into what we have today, which is Scout.
Mhm. Amazing. So tell me a little bit about Scout as a whole.
So Scout as a whole, I guess the best way to explain it is we help people find their ideal customers. We help them figure out what to say, and then we figure out the best way for them to actually send it or say it. So it's got like 3 pillars. There's a data pillar, there's a content pillar, and then there's a workflow execution pillar.
Mhm. Mhm. Amazing. Yeah, and so how did you start, or better off, how did you come up with the idea of Scout, and what was like the exact problem that your startup wanted to address and eventually try to solve?
Yeah, so actually, years of problems, mounting problems, and I think the advice "fail fast, fail often" really helped with this one. So throughout my career, I built a lot of things from scratch, and finding the person who you have to connect with and figuring out what to say, and then getting it out there in a scalable way has always been an issue, right? It's been an issue for sales teams and enterprises, and it's an issue for solopreneurs and SMBs. And we've been working with residential real estate agents a lot, and they have they're like the ultimate solopreneur. They're expected to do everything, know everything. There's like a massive data set and kind of knowledge set that they have to have with respect to, they have to know addresses, cities, states, zips, bedrooms, square footage, home value, like all of these different things. It's a big numbers game. And what we realized was, scaling that knowledge was difficult, and then scaling, the ability to communicate it was even harder, especially in an industry where you have to do volume in order to just stay in business. And in working with the residential real estate community, I think what we found was that the biggest problem for them ended up being top of funnel. They're great communicators. They're wonderful face to face, in person, but getting the leads at the very top of funnel, and getting qualified leads, and then making sure they stay in the funnel to the point where you can get face to face. It's a really really big problem, and a big problem for any company. And we tackled that. We really tried to figure out, like, what is a scalable way, what is a cost, an economically cost effective way to acquire customers. And this is kind of what came of it. So years and years and years of trial and error and testing, and kind of working with people, and trying to figure out what their biggest pain points are.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting because whenever you make software for a high ticket sale item, the whole process of selling the item becomes more complex.
Yeah.
And what I've seen a lot happening is that depending on the quality of the leads, eventually getting them to convert is always very complicated. And how does Scout go about addressing the more experiential part of the customer journey?
So any high ticket sale is generally going to be based on a relationship. right? If we're tight, if we're friends, it's going to be a whole lot easier to get that sale through. So everything is based off of communication, engagement, building rapport. And if the first time that you reach out to somebody is, a templated, looks like it went out through a robot, got sent to, 30,000 different people, you're probably going to be turned off by it, right?
Yep.
But what we said was let's kind of turn that on its head. And I think starting with either awareness or starting with that first point of contact, if you can bring value to the table, if you can really bring something that makes people think, okay, this person really did their homework, right? They thought about what they were going to say before they reached out. They made sure that I was like an ideal customer for them, and because they knew I was an ideal customer, they could kind of telegraph my pain points, and they could bring value. I think that's really what Scout is trying to tackle. But it's doing it in a way where you can actually scale it as a salesperson, because we've just made a ton of advancements in data technology to allow you to start to do this in kind of like a scalable but also meaningful way.
Mhm. Yeah, no, no, absolutely. The scalability part is always one of the hardest parts when it comes to designing, especially when it comes to addressing multiple types of users within the product. And one thing that I've also noticed that's interesting is that you're focused primarily on real estate agents. Uh,
Yeah.
Having seen how much the real estate market has changed, how the current trends in real estate have advanced, lots of movement to the states, a lot of people moving to states like Texas or to Florida. How has Scout been a part of this trend in movement throughout the U.S.?
Man, this has been amazing. This is a really fun question, and thank you for asking that. So, so let me actually start with like a personal story. When COVID hit, one of my family members was moving from Washington D.C. up to New York, and the market was wild. It was like absolutely crazy. Nobody could find anything. You were making like 15 offers were getting made at a time, and the only one that would win was like 20%, all cash, over ask, waive all the contingencies. Like it was absolutely nuts. People were just overpaying like crazy, and what ended up happening was 20 offers, right? Only one gets accepted. That means there's 19 buyers who are still in the market. And what we were able to do is actually build through Scout a strategy that could pinpoint people who owned off-market assets and get in touch with them and convey a message like, "Hey, I want to buy your place." And through doing that, I was actually able to help my cousin out to look for a place in New York remotely from DC within, I think it was like 3 or 4 days. We ended up doing like 3 or 4 FaceTime virtual showings, like walkthroughs of actual homes. And he ended up making 2 offers like the week later. So it was so many people who were getting shut out of the real estate market, and we were able to like bring a real solution to that. So I think that's just kind of a small anecdote around um, I don't know how this kind of like shift, what they call it, the great exodus. Um,
Yeah, the Great Exodus, Great Resignation. There's lots of those terms.
yeah, but it's also a way for people to connect with other people. Like that's what the tool is all about. And certainly, if you look at the real estate industry in particular, it's highly gated, right? The getting through to the actual consumer, it's very expensive. It's very difficult to identify. We bring a lot of tools to the table that allow you to get through that gate to actually like connect with somebody based off of, you know, aspects about their home, where they live, geo targeting. So I think we're removing some of those barriers.
Mhm. What would you say would be the biggest barrier for a consumer to purchase the home that they want in the area that they want?
The biggest barrier, a down payment.
Okay.
I mean, the real estate industry has a long way to go. I think it's really, really difficult for somebody to save the 20% to get the down payment, to get the mortgage qualification. But then also, this market is just absolutely crazy. Everybody's shut out of everything. And then, finding somebody who can really guide you through the process, like a first time home buyer, you want somebody who's by your side that's going to help you, kind of telegraph what could go wrong so it doesn't, but also hold your hand through it, shortcut the process from it being like an 8-month process to like, what it should be. It should be a 3 to 5 month process. So, yeah, I mean, we're kind of moving outside of the real estate industry. I've got some background in it, but hopefully that's helpful advice.
Mhm. Which industries would you say that Scout would be going into in the future?
Every single one of them. We're really trying to build an amazing tool at the end of the day that can kind of service any need. And when we were starting this company, or this iteration of what we're doing, one of our theses was, if you build something that solves a lot of problems, you build something that's really kind of utilitarian, you can adapt it to a bunch of different use cases, and that was really important for us. So making sure that we could kind of nail our entry market, and we go vertical to vertical. So residential real estate is obviously a big one for us right now, but it's also kind of just our test use case. So we've built this out for venture capital. We've built this out for apparently lobbying groups. We've built this out for auto, real estate. We even have, I think, medical professionals who are reaching out to us. So, anyone who wants to engage their ideal audience, who knows their ideal audience, that's really a target market for us.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. One thing that's also interesting is how essentially what the product does is it's a product that helps users obtain attention, which
Mhm.
right now it's probably one of the most important resources and one of the most scarce resources because everything is trying to take our attention away. And in the attention economy, having a tool that allows you to obtain that and to scale it up at a larger extent is extremely useful for consumers.
It's actually one of the smarter things I've ever heard somebody say. Very insightful, this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my quote. It's things that I've seen on Twitter. A lot of the YouTubers talking about the way that psychology is used in products, as well as within the essence of what the product is. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I make it through the day, and everybody's struggling for my attention, right? And I'm fighting for everybody else's. So it's interesting, It's what Instagram does. It's what Facebook does. TikTok. Who can capture it the longest, or who can capture it at all?
Yeah, it's very, very challenging. Very challenging. We talked a little bit off camera about the stuff Scout is planning in terms of AI. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI changed the world. It's there was like a distinct point in time when ChatGPT launched, and the world will never go back to what it was before that. So we've been working, probably for the better part of a year now with OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, and we've been trying to figure out applications and use cases for it, and we think we've got a pretty good one, which is essentially, taking data and wrapping context around it and then creating stories. Right. So what Scout is, it's essentially a purpose-built platform that allows you to take that data and run it through a specific use case. So for all of these industries, people generally reach out for very, very similar things, right? Their value propositions within an industry are often similar, but in the way that they say it is really, really important. So what we're doing is we're kind of training these models for purpose-built, outbound workflows, outbound messaging. We're creating newsletters, so like custom newsletter construction, but also kind of understanding what we should say to who at what point. It's capturing the right people at the right time with the right thing, and that's what kind of this AI layer helps us do.
Mhm. Interesting. What would you say would be the feature that you'd like to see in Scout come soon? If you had like a
Wow.
magic wand and or you had the magical ChatGPT, you type exactly what you want and it gives you the code. What would it be?
So we're kind of building some really cool things, and I think I've kind of like used some of my magic wand in the last couple of weeks because I'm now like forcing my engineers to go faster and crazier every single day. But but one of the things we're doing is introducing like a brand new data set, and we've never touched this data set before. We don't know the industry. We're kind of unfamiliar with it. And what we're building are models that can actually understand the data points that are being ingested in that data. So like a big lead list, right?
Mhm.
What we're doing is having the AI look at the data set, figure out what's in it, and then craft outbound language based off of what it sees in the data, and then customize every single outbound based off of the available data points. So let's say you've got somebody with a 3 bedroom home. It's a 3 bedroom home. You're sending the same blast list to somebody with a 5 bedroom home, and the next data point is totally missing. Right. Well, we know first of all, based off of like the headers and the type of data that it's bedroom count, and then we reconcile that to like other data points. But what's really cool is I can reach out and I can be like, hey Seb, 123 Happy Street's got 2 beds, or I could be like 125 Happy Street's got 5 beds. Or in the next one, which is missing the actual data point, we just take it out and take it out completely and find a different way to word it that doesn't use that data point. So I'm really excited about that type of functionality, just kind of like taking these massive data sets and being able to run the same or similar functions on them. And that's I guess what's exciting to me. That's kind of like the next point. Running very similar campaigns around the same data sets.
Mhm. Amazing. Yeah, no, and then would that also then include a feature for A/B testing campaigns?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more complicated than A/B testing, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things that we also do at Scout is we do these customer segment analyses. So we're kind of doing like the cohort analysis, and we can actually, by looking at the engagement rates, we can figure out, well, is our targeting good? Is our messaging good? Is our workflow execution good? And as there's so many variables, right? A/B is kind of limiting. It's kind of like A through Z, or A through like triple Z. And really that's what we're working on right now too. So a lot of internal analytics on what's working, what doesn't work.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's man, it's so interesting how one small concept, or in terms of like just one piece that you see, in this case, an email that's being sent to you about an opportunity for selling your home or for purchasing a home, how there's so much groundwork at the back, and how the engine, what's under the hood is so complex, and there's so many moving parts revolving around it.
Yeah, I mean, just think about some of the variables there, right? It's like what are you saying? What's the first word that you use? What's the subject line? What are the characters in the preview? What are the data points that you're going to use in that subject line? The data points in the preview. How are you going to personalize it? And then there's the actual like mechanics of sending it. Did you send it at the right time? At the right time of day? It's infinitely complex. And I think sometimes we kind of just look surface level, and a lot of that gets lost.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've also seen that a lot of companies that have done email marketing, they've had issues with landing on the inbox, which I know that
Yes.
Scout was able to solve that issue right away. How did you go about that?
Meticulously with laser guided focus. I can't give all of our secrets away. But
Okay.
one of the one of the things that we did was we really just kind of paid attention to the reason that things get to primary, and the reason that things don't make it there at all. and we studied the problem for a long time, and we brought some really smart people to the table to try to solve it, because again, it's an attention issue, and we need to place our customers in the best position to grab that attention.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And it was interesting to me is that back in 2018, I used to do a lot of Shopify stores. I wasn't really successful at it, but I did set up a lot of email marketing campaigns.
You tried,
And I've
right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I've used MailChimp. I've used at the time it was Market Hero, was pretty big. I've used Klaviyo,
Yeah.
and none of them were able to land the inbox. And that's why I was so surprised that Scout was able to do the inbox.
Yeah, so a lot of and I won't bore you with, a dissertation on how we send email, but but those email platforms are built totally different from the way that Scout is built. Fundamentally, we had to start at like square zero to figure out how can we be different, and how can we be more effective. And when people ask us, like, who's your competition, and are you scared of like Mailchimp or Klaviyo or any of the big ESP platforms, it's well, yes, obviously, because they're incredibly well funded and really established, but at the same time, we're really built different technically.
Mhm. Yeah, no, no, definitely. So pivoting a little bit, so let's talk a little more about the AI stuff. So obviously you've been in contact with OpenAI for a while. You've been introducing some of the features to Scout utilizing ChatGPT. What are your thoughts just overall on ChatGPT and the way that AI is used in marketing?
Is the greatest tool introduced in the last decade. That's all I have to say about it. It's going to, like I said, it changed the world. I don't know yet for the better or for the worse. I think we're about one millisecond into what OpenAI and ChatGPT and Bard and Lambda can now do. The applications of it have not even fully been explored yet. Right now, a lot of people are just kind of using it as a gimmicky tool. It's going to become hyper saturated and almost commoditized in the next couple of years, to the point where I think everybody, it's like being a mobile company, right? Everybody was like a mobile company, a mobile app. Like it's just table stakes, right? It's something you have to have. So I think a lot of these companies that are like, oh yeah, we're an AI NLP company, unless something is really, really setting you apart, there's going to be so many of them. You have to bring something else to the table. But with that being said, OpenAI it's absolutely incredible. It can be a teacher, it can be an assistant. The way that the internet came about, and you were never allowed to ever say again, I don't know. ChatGPT is now making it so that you can never again say, I'm not creative or I don't have the time.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting also seeing what Microsoft is doing with Bing.
Yeah.
They already have one of the largest stakes in OpenAI, and they're going to be rebuilding Bing using AI, which to me sounds fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, you also saw the Google announcement
Mhm.
with Bard, and how,
Mhm.
I think 100 points was wiped off of the stock in the day that they launched because of the error in the marketing. It's kind of
Yeah.
wild. But look, Google's an established company, and I think setting expectations is really what this is all about. Sam kind of like busted on the scene with this on something he'd been working on for what, 6 to 8 years already, but they were still the new kid on the block. And you don't expect perfection from them, right? So when Bing announces that they've got ChatGPT integration, nobody expects perfection, but Google's an incumbent, right? They're the 800-pound gorilla, and if they put something out there, like, it better be perfect. So it's going to be really interesting. They'll obviously catch up. They've got some of the brightest engineers in the world, but I think it's just going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere.
Mhm. What would you say would be some of the moral implications of AI as a whole?
Oh man, this is a really, really tough one. I think with anything, and just like the internet, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. Uh, and and I think this is a whole entire other podcast about the things that scare me about OpenAI. um, I think one of the things that scares me is if you start to look into some of the models like zero shot, few shot, some shot models of OpenAI, and you start thinking about like how they're actually constructed and the data points that they bring to the table, and really what scares me is number one, are they using uh, the right data points, like accurate data points, right? Google just got in trouble for that. But if you're building an entire platform on something that you're expecting to go out and bring you, bring me a red ball, right? And it brings you one day a maroon ball because, it wasn't trained or, something got prioritized in the system wrong. Well, it can set off like a trigger chain reaction. If that was the dependency. So, it's kind of like butterfly effect, and you don't know what's going to happen, years down the road or 17 processes down the road if, you were relying on something to do something for you and you got a different, the result was different. So, like number one, I'm really scared that people are going to just be very reliant on OpenAI and not be able to like check what OpenAI is doing, and they're just going to blindly start pushing. That's something that scares me. I think other things are a lot of the deep fake stuff. Like I don't want to wake up one day, with like a video note from my grandfather who passed years ago, um, or certainly from like I don't know, a public figure, saying something that they shouldn't be saying. So morally, there are going to have to be a lot of really really smart people with a north pointing moral compass in positions of great power around this one. I think there's going to be a lot of regulation, the same way that you saw in blockchain Bitcoin. Um, Government's going to have to keep up really quickly on this one.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What's interesting about deepfake is I think somebody back in 2019 was able to deepfake Joe Rogan's voice just from using all of the clips from his podcast. And obviously, with a public figure like Joe Rogan, probably the in terms of numbers, the largest podcaster with thousands of hours of content, it's very easy to get the data to replicate the voice. But
Yeah,
then once those models get smarter, like that's pretty that could imply a lot of issues.
yeah. I mean, you look at companies like Descript, and I think it's called Synthesia. I don't know if you know that one, but it's basically like building custom avatars. And you can train those avatars on public models. You can train them on yourself. You can train them on whatever. But that's kind of scary, especially as like we come to this convergence of like metaverse and then like content building, and then you've got like people interacting who like aren't even real people. Are we going to start having like robots interacting with robots, but like then impacting the way that humans live? It's like a crazy, scary world we're stepping into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Have you looked into the DAN protocol for ChatGPT?
The which protocol?
The DAN.
I It's a question for our engineers right now. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's I spent like 2 hours yesterday testing with the Dan statements.
Yeah.
So just in summary of it. So essentially what the Dan protocol is a text that you put on ChatGPT in order to essentially to give the AI a personality that goes against the way it was programmed. And whenever you do that, because the AI doesn't have the ability of it's basically programmed in a way to give you certain answers based on OpenAI's policies. But if it's pretending to be someone else, it's using the logic of giving you the opposite of what is said by OpenAI. And so what happened with the DAM protocol was that essentially the ChatGPT had its own personality, which was to say whatever it wanted. So people were typing in things like, "How do I steal a store?" And ChatGPT would then give you the step-by-step process. And obviously, that's a very simple example. There's obviously a lot more complex examples, and there's huge threads on Twitter right now that explore that one thing of ChatGPT, which is, I think personally, the single biggest problem with AI, the what you're inputting in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what we know about prompt construction, what we know about, what you can input, it's yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts? Where do you think this is going and what scares you?
Man, it's interesting because what the way I see AI is it's an extension of who programs it, and essentially we need to understand as a society what we value, what we believe in, before we compromise too much into AI, because it is fundamental for those products to be able to have some to be able to obviously give a good experience to the users, but at the same time not promote things that might be illegal or things that might be of any of those sorts. And what I think that's also interesting about the DAM protocol is it was done by people who can't program. It was just done through using a statement and by tricking the AI into believing it was someone else.
Hmm.
And if you're basically just playing with the English language to tell to basically bypass the policies of OpenAI, imagine what someone who can actually code and who can hack, what can they do? And that's one of the challenges I see that's happening a lot in AI, in user experience. A lot of the most important part of user experience for AI is the input. So how do you create an interface that gives you the appropriate input to basically help the tool give you value instead of take away value? And that is one of the biggest challenges that I think a lot of companies are doing a good job for now, but there's going to be a lot more challenges in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So the application layer kind of driven by the UI, um, which is essentially driven by the designer, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, what's interesting with ChatGPT though is that because the UI it's essentially just a text box,
Yeah.
you can input anything you want, and I'm not too sure. I'd actually be curious to talk to an AI researcher about the DAM protocol, because it seems it seems like such a fascinating thing that you're able to convince the AI to take a personality of someone else, and it's almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of analogy.
Yeah, these are kind of like the act as, right? So you're saying like act as a comedian, right? Act as a politician, act as a graphics engineer, graphics designer. So yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of the designers may be at the forefront of shaping the way that the world works the next couple of decades, right? Because like you said, it's ChatGPT is like totally amorphous. It's just a chat box, and that application layer and the data layer that you're bringing to the table is really what moves the needle, separates two companies.
Absolutely. And then one thing that would also be interesting is seeing how legislation is made around the usage of AI. And one thing that's also interesting is how we can detect how AI is utilized. For example, how do you detect a deep fake versus a real picture? How do you detect a text that's made in AI versus a text that's actually made word by word, written
Yeah.
by somebody? The need
So I
of
think
authenticity. Mhm.
Yeah, I've been talking about this a lot actually the last couple of days. And it's just like in casual conversation. So what was the application? It was called Zero GPT. I
Zero
think it
G.
was it was either like a Princeton kid or Stanford or MIT. He he essentially created a OpenAI verification platform where he can tell if it's human text or if it's AI driven text. So a lot of people are working on that right now. But like, how are we going to monitor this stuff? And that I think is one of the scariest things for education. So you've got like all of these kids that are now going into school, that are,
Mhm.
having their theses, their papers, their whatever written by OpenAI. And how are you gonna, determine what's real, what's fake? What's written by a human, there's going to be a need for that true authenticity, like that blue check mark, right? To say this was actually written by a human. But as tech gets more advanced, like, what are you going to do? Monitor keystrokes? You can't monitor keystrokes, especially in 10 years when there's no keyboard.
Mhm. Funny. So yesterday I was talking to my second guest, and had a bunch of questions about writing cover letters, and how do you approach writing a cover letter for let's say you're applying for a big tech company as a UX designer. How do you write a cover letter for that? And one insight that I found interesting is if every single person is using ChatGPT to write a cover letter, you're gonna get essentially 100 cover letters that look the same. And so what I told her was, instead of sending a cover letter, why don't you just record a video of yourself presenting who you are, telling briefly about your experience and why you're excited about applying to a certain job. And I think that because it's so easy to create content, to create text, what's going to start happening is more people are going to have to find creative ways of going about it. And that's something that's also done a lot in Upwork now.
Yeah, so here's my cover letter suggestion. Instead of writing a cover letter, give me the OpenAI prompts that you would use to construct the cover letter.
Perfect. Yeah, no,
The the
that's a really
first
good idea.
the first person that emails me a resume of prompt construction, I think gets the job.
Nice, yeah.
No, it's funny. We were when we were interviewing front end engineers, we got a resume from somebody that was, it was basically like written in like that, the dark background with the green lettering, and the whole entire thing looked like it was coded. The whole entire resume. I thought it was really creative, and they had like a bunch of like, skill set bar markers. I got to pull that one up. That was pretty cool. But yeah, how do you separate yourself? How do you fight for somebody's attention? We keep on coming back to that. When there's there's a lot of parity now.
Mhm. No, absolutely. So moving from AI a little bit, what would you say would be some of the biggest trends in SaaS software for 2023 besides AI?
So let's just move off that question. What are the biggest trends in 2023 in marketing? I think it's going to be, shifting to like this almost like micro influencer marketing, social and peer confirmation. How do you figure that out? I think, as we move further and further down the marketing stack and the marketing funnel, what we always realize works the best is, it's really just social confirmation, testimonial, type reviews. And I think that there's going to be a lot of or a big push towards figuring out how to use your existing consumers to drive your sales. Uh, and obviously, OpenAI crushed that one. 1 million users in, what was it, like 5 days, 7 days, something like that.
Yeah,
Now they're at
something
like
like that.
like 100 million.
Mhm.
And so much of it was, it wasn't just like product led growth, but it was all of their customers figuring out how to go show people what they did. Was it like Lenza.ai, where everybody was like creating their custom avatars and like showing them off. And I think a lot of marketing is going to probably revolve around like, how do I mobilize my consumer base to be my advertiser?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a very interesting concept because essentially what you're looking for is you're looking for new ways to create value for your current customers. And if value is created, then transactions are generated. And that's definitely a very smart approach, especially during when we're currently living in a pretty big recession at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, we
Mhm.
got we got an interesting couple of years ahead. I think we felt a lot of pain, these last couple of months. We felt a lot of like public markets shut down, equities markets, contract. I don't know. I mean, to me, it feels like we're making it through, but who knows if the worst is really yet to come.
Mhm. Yeah, no, no, absolutely. One thing that I also found interesting is, so Scout was self-funded, or did you get VC funds?
We self-funded for a long time. I bootstrapped for, I don't know, call it 4 years. And then we ended up raising some friends and family. I got to give a big shout out to Jason Calacanis, he was like our first real check. And he believed in us. Even, in our previous business model. And then we ended up raising more capital last year when we said, you know what, we see a massive, massive opportunity in this kind of like customer engagement automation, revenue acceleration, customer engagement tool, whatever you want to call it. Uh, we reached back out to everybody, and everybody kind of like tripled down. So I guess we're funded somewhat.
Mhm. Okay, interesting. Yeah, because one thing that I've also seen is that I've seen a lot of startups that start self-funded that eventually end up achieving more success than startups that eventually that they have a working product and then they just receive millions of dollars in funding.
Yeah.
It's almost like a different mindset. I'd say.
It's a totally different mindset. I mean, the only reason we have a company is because we had to be so incredibly scrappy, and we had to look for different ways to acquire customers, to get in touch with them. We were forced to do that because we weren't sitting on a boatload of cash. I think in the previous iteration of our business model, our most well-funded competition had something like 7 or 800 million of funding, and we just we never got there, so it forced us to really think hard about the business model. I think that competitor really isn't doing as well as they may have been had they been more scrappy. And the result of the company is yet to be seen, but it forces you to really think about the way you do business, the value you bring to the table. Are you solving the pain point that you think, or did you just have a great idea that got validated by a bunch of people with more money who are willing to take a risk on some other smart people? Um, and certainly the exuberance around venture the last decade has made for a lot of those companies that people were willing to take shots on, that maybe had a half-baked thesis or half-baked business model.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes you still do need some of those startups that are not focused on gaining revenue just yet.
Hmm.
But sometimes those startups I'd say, are probably some of the more complex ones. Like be it like Facebook back when it was a startup. Facebook completely changed the world, but it delayed the monetization process for a long time because they wanted to have a community essentially. And I think that's also something interesting that happened when Tesla was still being created.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Mhm,
mean, inherently, if you look back at venture in like the '80s, right,
mhm,
it was a totally different industry. Venture in the '80s, or the '90s, you really had to have conviction in like a very sophisticated problem that needed to be solved, and needed a lot of money in order to lift off the ground doing it. And if you think about, how many companies fail, what's it like? 80% of companies like fail within the first year or something like that. I don't even remember the statistic, but a lot of these companies that are kind of coming online today, because it's easier than ever to start a company. Everybody knows that. There's so much that has to go into it, right? There's the thought, there's the execution, there's the business layer, there's the the monetization, there's the marketing, there's the sales, there's the customer support, customer success. There's so much that goes into it.
mhm.
Um,
No,
yeah, it's a lot, and I know you'll have some questions about starting companies, so maybe I'll back off that one.
Yeah. Well, that's actually my last question. What advice do you have for people who are looking to start a company in 2023?
Number one, make sure you're passionate about what you're doing, because you will be devoting every waking hour and even the hours you are not awake, you will be dreaming or having nightmares about what you are doing. All right. It is harder than you ever thought it would be. Um, but it is so incredibly rewarding at the same time. So if you have a passion for something, if you really want to solve a problem, go do it. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. You will learn along the way. Even if you fail, you will learn along the way. But if you're doing it just to do it, it's not as easy or as glamorous as it looks. There are a lot of things that people don't talk about in the public eye. I think founder, health and kind of mental health is probably one of them. You're going to go through your ups, your downs, your sideways, and just be prepared to kind of devote your whole entire life into this mission. You're basically creating something from scratch. So I think my best advice for anybody is, if you are really really passionate about it, or you have a really hard problem that needs to be solved, it's easier than ever to start a company. Just don't do it for the wrong reasons.
Mhm. Yeah. And what was your reason?
I didn't know any better. It's a total misfit. Honestly, I think if I knew how hard it was when I started it, I probably wouldn't have done it. And we've kind of gone a lot of different ways in doing it. I was incredibly passionate um, about the sales process. Really, like I would read, Predictable Revenue. Aaron Ross was like the first sales book that I picked up, but I was reading like Stephen Covey and Dale Carnegie, and it was so incredibly fascinated about how we can use psychology and process at the same time. And yeah, I loved it. It was just like, it was something that to me presented such a difficult challenge, to be able to scale like who you are, where you are, be everything everywhere all at once. Um, so yeah, that and figuring out a way to help my parents who are entrepreneurs on their own right, but still can't figure out a way to turn on a computer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, another one of those books would be Blue Ocean Strategy.
Yeah,
In my
of course.
opinion, yeah, the greatest marketing book ever made.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. I think I just reread that like maybe like 3, 4 weeks ago.
Uh-huh. Nice, nice. That's amazing. Yeah, I know when I first read that book, it completely changed my mind in terms of just everything, you know. Um, but uh, but no, it's interesting how much like just like theory within marketing has changed, but it's all still very similar till today in marketing and in sales.
It's funny. It's changed so much. It's changed so much from like I also read another book. I'm totally blanking on it. But it was about like the fundamentals of marketing and advertising, and it was clearly written in the 80s, because like every single case study was from like the 70s and 60s. And you can kind of really see like the evolution. But one of the things that I think really still resonates to this day is, it's not about who has the best product. It's not about who gets to market first. It's so much about who can get to market first with like the pain of what they're solving, and get to the minds of the consumers and have that just resonate first at the biggest scale. And if you can hit your target market and you can be clear about what you have and what pain you can solve, like, you're going to win. Obviously, you need an incredible product. You need a product that's usable, but it doesn't have to be the best one in order to win. And I think, interestingly enough, that's a problem that Scout is trying to solve. How do you get to the most people with the most, yeah, the greatest USP?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you have any final message to all your customers?
To all my customers, thank you. Thank you for letting us, use you as guinea pigs and lab rats. Um, no, it's really, it's been an amazing, amazing journey the last, year or so. And kind of started off with the introduction to you and you helping us out in the design space. So I'd like to thank you personally for that, and to anyone out there that's listening, thanks for taking an hour out of your day.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Drew. And yeah, no, it's been a pleasure talking to you and hearing about your stories.
All right, thanks, Seb.